In episode 1, we talk about everyday preparedness, small incremental things you can have on hand to not only be prepared for the big events, but also just the unexpected. Stay tuned. All right, well, welcome to episode 1, the inaugural episode of Fourth Turn Consulting. I'm Eric. I'm joined by two terrific individuals today, JB and Amos. Today's topic, we're going to start with everyday preparedness, something that I think a lot of people look to prepping for or getting prepared and having readiness for hurricanes, tornadoes, things like that. But just what do you do every day? And how is it starting to really change every day, both in the government and in our personal lives? So JB, you and I were talking the other week about this, and I think if you could start to outline that again with how it's changing the government first and how that begins to apply down to our families.
Sure. So since the late 50s or the early 60s, the methodology for the government in times of crisis and continuity is to pick up and relocate to buried facilities, to bunkers. That methodology has been used for decades, but about 10 years ago, that started to change. And instead of just immediately bugging out and leaving the Capitol or wherever you are, the executive branch or judicial branch, and getting in your airplane or bus or whatever you're doing and going to one of your underground facilities, now they're starting to think about continuity in terms of devolution immediately. In other words, you devolve your power and authority to another region or another office until such time as you can stand back up, if you can stand back up and reassume control. That has been the big change coming out of the end of the Trump administration, where they've promulgated some policy that recommends that to all, or requires that of all executive branch departments and agencies. On a continuous basis, you must be able to immediately devolve or transfer power to another part of your organization so that you don't have any interruption in capability. Now, how does that play in with individual continuity plans? Well, individuals can't just pick up and transfer. I can't transfer my authority or my position as the head of my household to you, Eric. Doesn't work very well. So unless there's some magic decoder ring that I don't have, nobody can do that. So really couple that with the fact that most average Americans can't or don't have a relocation facility. They don't have a cabin in the woods that's fully stocked and has all the communications, food, water, heat, electricity, all the things that you need to survive. It's not really practical. Then the pandemic happens in 2020. People realize, well, I can't really go out, and relocating doesn't necessarily help. Here we are right back to square one, and that's shelter in place and harden what you have, and basically live off of what you're stocked up on for as long as you can, and then resupply. I think that methodology works across a number of spectrums, whether it be adverse weather, pandemic, interruption of power, any of the things that we normally encounter in, less than a tremendous event like a pandemic. That happens every day or every year in Washington, D.C. I lose power for a day, or a big snowstorm comes, or derecho, or whatever it is, and we're without something. So when we thought about this collectively, and we've had discussions about this previously, we thought we really need to start with a solid foundation, and the stool, the legs of that stool are really around your essential needs: food, water, power, and the ability to communicate. So that becomes the basis for everything. Then from there, you harden that core, and then you build out. And that's not crazy prepping. That's just being smart and prepared for whatever eventuality comes your way. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, and absolutely. And one of the things that Amos, we were talking about just 2 days ago was what happens when a water main breaks. Something even simple as that can put a whole city block out for how long? And then what do you do with water? How do you cook? How do you do all that stuff? Talk a little bit about any of those experiences you've had. And Amos, we have the Zoom mute going on. There we go.
It wouldn't be a proper Zoom call if that didn't happen. But water is one of those things that we all expect to have. We turn on our tap, the water comes out, we take a shower, we flush the toilet, we wash our hands, we cook. We forget just how many times a day we turn that on. And in a city environment or in a well environment, we can have water main breaks, we can have water outages, we can have pollutants in the water that require us to boil the water. We can have all these different things that actually start to require us to have a little bit of a stockpile of water or have a mechanism for cleaning that water. It's kind of on a yearly basis where it seems like there's a water main break or a water problem somewhere in our network that requires us to either not have water for a period of time. And the first thing that happens is you think, well, I'll just go out to the store. Well, everybody in your neighborhood is now going out to the store. So all of a sudden, you're going further and further away from your home, which is fine in the case of, fine weather if it happens on a beautiful, spring day. But all of a sudden, if that happens in the middle of the winter, when you compound these issues with a snowstorm, with a major weather event that knocks down a lot of trees, and now all of a sudden you don't have the luxury of going 10, 15 miles down the road to stock up on water. So it's important for you to have that right there at your home, or a mechanism to clean or boil that water.
Yeah, I think the pandemic this past year taught everybody a hard lesson, whether it was trying to make sure you had enough water, canned goods, paper towels. You couldn't get paper towels, cleaning supplies, gone, still are in the area right around here. And you would go store to store to store, masking up, putting yourself back in that environment, and it's empty-handed. So it's an interesting thought. One of the things
it's always
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, it's always better to have those things on hand, right? I'd rather have 5 or 6 cases of water in my basement that I know I can go to,
Right.
as opposed to having to go out to get it. Because the second you have to leave your home to go pick up things, you put yourself in danger or risk. If it's the pandemic of getting sick, if it's a snowstorm of getting into an accident, if it's a windstorm with trees down or a major event like that, it's just the hazards of moving around and getting around where there could be live wires down. So anytime you have to leave that home, you put yourself in risk. So it makes sense to at least make sure you have those basic supplies, those basic things to, as JB said, harden your facility so you don't have to immediately venture into a dangerous situation to pick up more provisions. You have them there. You have the basic things you need to get you through until it is safe to go out.
That's a really good point. And hitting the bug out versus hardening up or sheltering in place, essentially, right? You have to be able to build that over time. And all of us were talking incrementally. How do you do incremental phasing of some of this? You can't just go out and buy 5,000 gallons of water, tons of food, whatever else you might need, even self-defense. So I don't know, JB, if you want to go first, talk a little bit about how incrementally building up this store or these resources helps.
Yeah, so I mean, it can be as simple as picking up an extra case of water each time you go to the store, and then that becomes your stockpile, and you rotate it from bottom to top, or however you want to do that. Or you can buy water storage containers. You can buy reconstituted food that is easy to keep on hand and easy to order. And these things don't cost a lot of money. It doesn't cost a ton of money to buy water storage containers for your family. It costs a little bit of money, and it takes up a little bit of room, but it's there when you need it. And same thing with so food, water. You start to get more costly when you have to add backup power, or even a secondary communications capability. But that's all dependent upon how far you travel or who you need to talk to, and all those vary by individual. But for an average family, American family, I would think that for a small amount of money and applied over time, you could really build a strong capability to fall back on across any number of hazards. So,
And to JB's point, right, it's all about that incrementally increasing your supply, so you don't feel like you have to buy it all at once. You don't feel like you're just hoarding everything all at once. Even talking about backup power, you have that easy entry, right? Making sure you have a Coleman stove on hand, something that you can boil some water in if the power goes out, right? You don't need to have a backup pay the thousands of dollars for a backup generator right away. I mean, eventually it's a great thing to have for overall preparedness for your food and your fridge and other things. But that basic entry can simply be, hey, do I have a Coleman stove and a couple of canisters of propane or gas on hand, so that if the power goes out for a week or a few days, I can make some hot cocoa and some noodles and some spaghetti and some pancakes in the morning. It's just having those things. So even on those small scale events, those few day events that happen, you're prepared and you feel like you can live a basically normal life, a comfortable life, and not be scrambling to find things at that last minute. So, breaking it into those small, easy pieces, right? Buying a few extra cans of water, buying a few extra meals, or if you buy lots of canned items or something, instead of just buying one or two, buy 5 or 6 each time you go in, and all of a sudden you start building that supply. Or making sure, hey, I got a camping stove, let's get a couple things for it, so if the power goes out, we can make s'mores for the kids even. It's just making things a little bit easier, a little bit more manageable in those events, and you slowly build over time.
Yeah, and I think you can build. There's a couple ways you can build. You can build out and buy the apparatus you need, but you can also build supply and say, okay, well, my near-term goal is to have 30-day supply of all the basics, and that's fine. But down the road, once you acquire that, then you still slowly can build the remaining maybe 60 or another 30 days or up to 90 days or whatever it is, and that's going to be predicated on who you are and how you assess your needs and requirements in your area, in your city, town, state, whatever it is. So there's no magic bullet for all of this. You as an individual, you as a family, need to think about what it is you need and think about how much of it you need, and then slowly build that out until you have enough of a cushion that makes you comfortable.
And to add on to that, so figuring out how to incrementally buy, especially when things are on sale, you might not need all those cans of soup or beans or pasta, but if it's 3 for 1, go for it. That's the incremental buy. But something we were all talking about, it doesn't hit people right away when they try and get storage of food and water, is allergies and what you typically eat. So don't go out there and buy cans of Spam because you think that's what you're going to use. You want it to be useful, utilized, so you can rotate it, eat it. But thinking about food allergies, making sure anybody else that might come to your house or a place that with everyone's going to shelter in place, that you have what you need for all those people. So if anybody wants to add more context to that as well.
Yeah, and I think there's 2 trains of thought on surplus or building up your stockpile of food, and I don't think either of them are bad, right? One of them is the I want to buy the pre-made reconstituted meals, and then the other one being kind of what you're saying, like, let's make sure that we kind of have on hand what we normally want to eat, and we just have more of it, of the shelf stable variety, right? And neither of them are wrong, but both of them involve considering the people that might be coming to your home, right? If you have a sister or a niece or somebody who lives down the road, when the power goes out, you all go to your house because you have a wood stove. Well, if one of them is gluten-free or has a nut allergy or is vegetarian or something, like, it might be kind of nice to keep those things on hand as well, because you don't want all these people coming to your house because the power's out, and then no one has anything to eat, or you have everything to eat because you love whatever it is, but no one else does. So I think having that is really important.
Yeah, and it's doing it incrementally. You don't have to do this all at once, but if in the back of your mind, periodically you think about, okay, I haven't gotten this, or I don't have enough of that, and you make that just one more item on your shopping list for the week or whatever, then slowly you'll get to where you're self-sustaining, and that's really what we want people to be able to do, is to weather the storm until things come back to some amount of normalcy. So it's not hard, but it takes persistent effort to make that happen, and that's whether you're a government, a family, or an individual.
Right.
So. Well, and I like to think that, and kind of going back to something we talked about before, but JB, you made me think of it. One of the biggest things that impede people is thinking, well, where am I going to put all this stuff? And I actually think we're in a really unique position right now, because the pandemic has forced everybody to, at least in the beginning of the pandemic, buy a whole bunch of stuff, right? They did go out and stockpile for the most part. So people have already found the room where they're going to store things. So it's now taking advantage of that and saying, okay, yeah, I do have this pantry where I was still, storing all these paper towels and things. Why don't I start filling that up with these other things, with the water, with the food, and all these other things? So we've already kind of made some space in our closets, because we've already been kind of going into the preparedness mentality in the beginning of the pandemic. So let's just keep that going. Let's hold on to that and cherish what we've learned, and kind of build on it as we move forward. So now when it's a pandemic, we're ready, but also when it's the power's out, we're ready, or the water main breaks, we're ready here.
You're not forced to do something you're not forced to have to do something. You can think about it. You can fall back on what you already have in place, and then that'll give you time to figure out what the best approach is. I just have to wonder how many people put themselves at risk trying to obtain Clorox wipes and toilet paper in the last year. If you have a little bit of that and you keep it on the shelf, then you can wait it out, at least until you can deliberately go out and acquire what you need and only what you need, and do that as infrequently as possible. And that's the simplest way to work at it.
Taking it into a little bit different direction.
There's other things. Oh.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, when there's snowstorms and blizzards and other events, how many people put themselves in danger to get the basic needs, instead of realizing homes are in place. I can wait until this event goes, and I don't have to be in crazy lines fighting people in the grocery store for the last loaf of bread, or the last this or the last that. I can just be at home with my family, and a lot more enjoyable. I don't want to say they're fun, but when you don't have to worry about the basic things, you feel a lot better and a lot more secure, and that can make them a lot more enjoyable, or at least.
Yeah, it takes the fear out of the equation, I think, and that anxiety drives people to do things that they wouldn't naturally do. If you already have it, then you're much better off.
Actually, so that's where I was going to hit a little bit. While some of this might seem, I wouldn't say alarmist, but if you have to get these things incrementally, it doesn't feel as overbearing or fearful. And then you can always have that peace of mind and go, well, if I do get stuck, the unexpected, didn't anticipate this weather event, didn't anticipate something shutting down or supply chain disruption, I feel good enough, at least for a period of time, to not have to put myself into a more anxiety-filled moment or dangerous moment, whatnot. So I think that was a really good comment.
Yeah, when you consider the average American grocery store only keeps 3 to 5 days of supply on hand,
yep.
Doesn't take long for the supply chain to break down, and you should be able to cruise through that without much worry if you're carefully stockpiling what you need in a way that's manageable and sensible.
You got it. All right. Well, gentlemen, thank you for the time today. Great discussion, more to come. And if anyone watching this video liked what they saw, please hit the like button, leave a comment below, and subscribe to Four Turn Consulting. Thanks all. Until next
Thank you.
time, stay safe and be well.
Stay safe.